It's the Redbird Reboot podcast. Are you ready to get rebooted, Cardinals fans?
He settles down, at least in the zone, and does not stop running.
Blake Murphy.
This is the identity for the Arizona Cardinals.
The run defense is just horrendous, and it's been horrendous for the Cardinals for a long time.
And Marcos Labrada.
He's going to bring over his philosophy. It should make it better.
Present the hottest NFL podcast from the country's hottest state.
He should be turning around the logo.
Actually, some breaking news we can cover here. This popped up just about, 6 minutes ago.
It's Redbird Reboot.
Hello, Arizona Cardinals fans. Welcome in to the RBR, the Redbird Reboot podcast. We got your two co-hosts here, Blake and Marcos, at Blake Murphy 7 here on the left of your viewing screen, at Pancake Soul for those of you watching on YouTube on the right. For those of you listening in on the audio version of the podcast, make sure that you're listening in. We're updating each of those podcasts daily with new content from Mock Draft Monday with Joe Como. We've got Bird and Goal as well, at least. It's going to be doing a couple of draft shows, I believe, upcoming, and at least one or two before we get to the NFL draft. They'll also be on Mock Draft Monday as well. And of course, you've got our RBR content as well, Marcos. You were there on Mock Draft Monday a little bit at least, which was fun. It's obviously a great content for you guys to make sure you're not just viewing it here on X or on YouTube, but listening to it as well. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We've got today some talk with the free agency finishing up for the Arizona Cardinals. We've got a couple of guys that we didn't talk about last time, a couple of signings that were made official as of today. We'll also get a little bit into some of the latest draft news and rumors that are popping up, at least as far as the Arizona Cardinals, and cap it off talking about quarterback. Cardinals went out and brought in Gardner Minshew. They have not brought in any other quarterback. This means that, Marcos, if they're going to be bringing in someone else besides Keaton Slovis to the position, it's going to have to be through the NFL draft. As we get going today with our show, how are you doing today as we enter yet another week of talking Cardinals on the Redbird Reboot?
Same as always, just like a little bit uncertain which direction this franchise is going to go, which way they're going with all the signings and stuff. We're not getting much clarity of what we're going to go as far as like the draft and whatnot, getting a bunch of, like depth signings and whatnot, which is fine. But at the same time, we're not in a set like direction as of right now. So I'm still kind of uncertain.
It's definitely a lot, at least, where you feel there is going to be uncertainty until that actual name gets called on draft night or draft nights, considering the fact that the NFL has 3 nights devoted to the NFL draft. Let's talk a little bit about some of these other signings that popped up. The biggest one, of course, being Elijah Wilkinson signing a 2-year deal with the contract. It is something that is interesting because he was previously with the Cardinals as a guard, but last year he played right tackle in a pinch for 17 games for the Atlanta Falcons. He didn't have the best of PFF grades, didn't have the worst of PFF grades, but it was not great at tackle. The biggest thing, of course, with all of this we talked about, Marcos, is when the Cardinals signed Matt Pryor, it felt like it was a depth move. You didn't feel like he was going to challenge the other starting guards that they had signed in Isaac Seumalo, who clearly is going to be signed to replace Evan Brown at left guard. You didn't feel like he was going to challenge John Gaines for one of the other guard or backup center spots. And you probably felt like, at most, he would challenge, I believe it is not Elijah Higgins, but Isaiah Adams being the right guard position. This is a different move. This is someone who signs a 2-year deal who I think at least is probably going to be their swing tackle. That seems like it's swing tackle money. I don't know if Kelvin Beachum is coming back to the team. If he is, it's going to be late in the process, probably around training camp would make the most sense. But Elijah Wilkinson, it's one of those guys that gives you some flexibility. He is an upgrade, I would say, over what Pryor would be at tackle, but he's not the same upgrade as it would be potentially bringing back Kelvin or drafting an offensive tackle in the NFL draft, whether that be with pick 3 or with a later pick. It is interesting because the Cardinals, as of what we're going to talk about, they've signed a couple of defensive linemen. They have not signed any edge rushers so far yet. I don't know if this is something we can read into too much, but what do you think about bringing Wilkinson back and then He comes back with a little bit of a tizzy from Falcon fans because of a little bit of Instagram comments. If you haven't seen them by now, he went back at a couple of Falcons fans, called the Falcons a clown show. A lot of people said, well, you're going to the Cardinals, which is a bigger clown show, and then it just ended up being one of those spots from there in Instagram. There's sometimes players in social media that will react and have some good stuff that pops up. I think of J.J. Watt. Other players, it may not be as optimal, Marcos. This seems like it's one of those situations with bringing Wilkinson back into the fold. Not even just on a one-year deal, but on a 2-year deal.
Yeah, I'm pretty curious to see what kind of comments he was making because, of course, being that the Cardinals are who we are, I fully understand why the perception around the nation is that we're just a laughable franchise and everybody sees us that way, so they tell us to get in our place. And it's like, to me, my answer to that is we are a fan base and we 100%, not only are we hardcore fans like we should be, or like not like we should be, what I'm saying is like we are loyal to our Cardinals fans, our Cardinals organization, even if they're that bad, even if they're that big of a clown show, just like they are. So for them to be able to speak out and say like, well, you're...
I think your microphone just cut off for a second there, Marcos. I'm sorry about that. But there you go. You're back, sir.
All right, yeah, I think I'm going to have some... I think I'm having a little bit of audio. I'm not sure if you can hear that feedback, but let me know if it cuts out again, and then we'll see what I do with fixing that. But anyway,
perks of live podcasting, folks.
Yep, exactly. So, curious about those Wilkinson comments. Of course, when franchises, fan bases, and obviously players get involved in that, it could get pretty ugly and whatnot. So I was curious as to why he posted the comments that he did and why he left that show. But let's be real, he is not going to be playing guard for us. He will be playing tackle if he does play tackle. I don't see them starting him at right tackle. I would have probably thought that they would go after somebody better to be able to get that starting role. Of course, they didn't, and they let the two premier tackles that could have taken that right tackle, they went to other franchises. They didn't really feel like they needed to spend money on that. So, yeah, I really do feel the closer we're getting to that draft, that it's going to be a situation where we draft tackle as the 3 overall pick, which I'm not for.
Yeah, it's just as, I think, risky to be able to look at a guy like Elijah Wilkinson starting at right tackle as it is to look at starting a rookie for the season. And that's something that I'm not too concerned about. I think personally for me, it does seem to clear up the Cardinals potentially looking at an edge rusher early in the draft or making a trade back to try to be able to make a move at some other position as far as within the offensive side, which we'll talk about that because there's been plenty of Ty Simpson talk this week. It's just as easy to mess up as it is to get it right. And that's something that I think is important for Cardinals fans to recognize, that this isn't an exact science when it comes to the draft. There's a lot of luck that does go into some of these things. One of the things I'm at least grateful for with the Cardinals bringing in Wilkinson, it feels like you're not a complete loss at tackle. You've got Elijah Wilkinson, you've got Josh Fryer, you can bring back Kelvin Beachum potentially. I think that means that you could be, if nothing else happens, let's say that the Cardinals take an edge rusher and then trade up for a quarterback round 2, give up their round 3 pick, or use another round 4 pick on another inside linebacker potentially. That would be something that I would say that you would at least be set for the position. Speaking of inside linebacker, let's talk a little bit about one of the other signings that happened with the Cardinals, which would be they brought in I'm not actually seeing it on here for the most part. I believe it just was signed the other day, but they bring in a linebacker from the New England Patriots. Let me double check his last name here just because I want to make sure. Jack Gibbons. I was thinking Givens, but it's Jack Gibbons with the B. He was part of the Patriots Super Bowl team, was essentially a 100-plus tackle guy that they had for this last year. That's something that was a unique signing because for me, it seems like when you look at what he played last year, he was a linebacker that played a lot at their Mike position for the most part, played a little bit at the Sam spot. He was an undrafted free agent and was a full-time starter with the Patriots in all 17 games, including the Super Bowl. And they're saying, he's going to provide depth at middle linebacker behind Mack Wilson Sr. I have a different suspicion, Marcos. I think that this could be where you're going to see Mac Wilson play potentially more as the blitzing linebacker, more of the strong side linebacker, while helping call the defense as the green dot. And Gibbons could potentially be your Mike linebacker that's in the middle of the field. Cardinals, I think, could be moving to a little bit of a 3-4 sort of setup, at least in that regard, where you've got two linebackers in the middle of the field, two outside linebackers on the side, and then you've got your regular nose tackle that plays in the middle on some downs. I think the Cardinals, every team plays a hybrid defense. There's not any 1-3-4 or 4-3 anymore because of how the NFL works. But this tells me that one of the guys who's clearly going to be in the spotlight is the Cardinals linebacker Cody Simon, who played a year ago, had a difficult time in coverage. Gibbons, from what we know at least, was a little bit better in coverage. Maybe some of that was schemed up for him with the Patriots, but it's one of the places where they signed him to a 2-year deal. And I think it's going to be maybe not a transformative move, as if the Cardinals would draft someone like a Sonny Styles in the top 5. But I think it could see some changes to the linebacker room where you're going to have at least another capable starting guy that goes in for the Cardinals next to the return of Mac Wilson to help be able to improve your pass coverage at the linebacker spot and especially improve your run defense, which was one of the reasons you lost so many games a year ago.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you obviously moved off of ADG, you getting Gibbons, somebody who's at least capable, and the run game is at least somewhat of like an upgrade. Especially being that third linebacker, you never know where you're going to step into the action. Mostly because Mac Wilson has gone injured, and he lost a lot of time last year. That's the reason why Cody Simon was thrusted into the starting position, him alongside with that Keem Davis-Gaither, and of course they had a game with Owen Papo in there. So having this guy as a depth signing, being a capable starter, that's a good sign. Of course, he's more of a depth guy than what you would say is like an actual starter. He's not one of the
I don't know. We'll see. He started last year, at least with Gibbons, so I have a feeling that he could be a starter for the most part. That's one of the personal things that I feel, but we'll have to find out if he is going to be a depth guy. He'll for sure be a great depth guy to have at the linebacker spot.
Yeah, absolutely. So at the very least, we know he can start, and he knows somewhat what to do in a defense, and is good in coverage. So that's an A+ right there.
That's all that you can ask for, at least. One of the other guys we can talk about being that of Devin Duvernay. Duvernay is a punt returner. We can see here in the punt return against the Kansas City Chiefs. He's got good bursts. He can play out of the slot, but he's best known as a kick returner. He hasn't really played a whole lot of spots out of as a slot receiver. That's something that we have wanted to see, at least when you're a Cardinals fan, is who the slot receiver is going to be. They already have a slot receiver in Kendrick Bourne. This is the Greg Dortch wide receiver 4 signing. It's a 1-year deal, $2.5 million. I believe it was Jordan Schultz who reported and said that aside from being a 4th receiver, so when you go to a wide receiver 4, you're going to talk about you're going to split out the team. You right now are probably going to have Elijah Higgins be that 4th receiver in a lot of these different 2 tight end sets that you can split out. But if you do want to get some extra speed on the field for some deep throws, you're going to have Marvin Harrison Jr., Michael Wilson, Kendrick Bourne as your 3rd receiver and slot guy, and you got Devin Duvernay as your 4th receiver. That's pretty much going to be it, I think, as far as you got Simi Fehoko is going to be your special teams wide receiver as far as for covering kicks and everything else there. He was returning to the Cardinals as well on a 1-year deal, so you get now Devin Duvernay, Kendrick Bourne, Simi Fehoko. Underneath Marvin Harrison Jr. and Michael Wilson, Cardinals are remaking the entire wide receiver depth chart.
Does this mean that Greg Dortch is no longer going to be on the roster?
This means that Greg Dortch signed a 1-year deal with the Detroit Lions earlier today. He is back with Drew Petzing, and it's going to be the Dortch is going to be lit in Detroit. As soon as they signed Duvernay, you knew that Dortch was going to be out the door. Is how it felt like for most Cardinals fans. Which, in one case, it kind of stinks because you've grown to love little Dortch at least the rest of the time. But on the other hand, the Cardinals, I think, have a legit chance to upgrade their receiver core because Bourne is a proven wide receiver 3, and Duvernay is a proven returner. The only question you're going to have at least is if the Cardinals draft another guy, is there even really a spot on the team where he's going to have to cut his teeth on special teams? I think the Cardinals would be more likely to draft a receiver in the 2027 draft versus this year. It feels like they're pretty set at the receiver spot, but especially with how many tight ends they use.
Yeah, both of our tight ends are mostly pass-catching type tight ends, and your one run-blocking tight end was injured from last year. I'm not even sure what his recovery time is going to be, if he's going to be there. We're going to see them, but he's going to get quite a bit of snaps, especially in this offensive system with all the jokes about Drew Petzing wanting his guy and it being like a somewhat of a similar scenario with I keep forgetting what the tight end's name of Arthur Smith's tight end. I forgot John
Oh,
Smith.
Johnu. Yeah, good old
Yeah,
Johnu.
it's not that same situation. And I think you might be surprised about like what Tip Ryman's usage is going to be in this type of offense. So we don't really have much space for another receiver anyway.
Yeah, Arizona is something that is unique in terms of having the best pass catching tight end, I would say, in the NFL. I know all respect to the Oakland Raiders and everything that they've got with Brock Bowers over there, but we've seen with the blocking that Trey McBride's able to bring in addition to that just makes him as potent of a weapon. And with George Kittle coming off of an injury right now, at least a pretty severe Achilles injury that'll knock him out for probably the start of the season. We'll be able to see exactly how that goes. Let's do a quick shout out to some of the people who are in our comments section here. We got Silver Wolf, as always, is in our comments section saying, let's go. You got Mizaki Felix saying, what is up? Thank you for tuning in with us, guys, at least for that one. We got AZ Jace talking about how Marcos is a dog. Thank you, AZ Jace, for tuning in for the most part. We love all of the guys who are watching on YouTube. We love our guys who are watching on X as well. Thank you guys for tuning in, as always, and making our show happen. Couldn't have it without listeners. We could probably just be talking to ourselves. It just would not be as fun. We talked a little bit about most of the signings there. The Cardinals also had 2 more guys that they signed on the defensive line. We talked a little bit about Andrew Wingard, I believe, last week, as that is your Jalen Thompson replacement. He'll probably be playing, I think, at least a little bit of free safety. He's going to be one of the guys that I think you're going to look at Buda Baker and a similar skill set in Rabbit. I think that when Rabbit's going to be back at free safety, you'll have a larger body, and Wingard will be up closer to the box along with Buda. And then there's going to be some times where you're going to want to have that coverage skill from Buda Baker, and Rabbit are going to be probably closer to the box. That would put Andrew Wingard back over into that free safety spot. He did that big pass breakup on that 4th down heave that the Cardinals did, I believe, downfield. I think it was to Greg Dortch in the end of the game scenario against the Jaguars. That was a little bit of a shock, but he was the one who got that big pass breakup. Cardinals also have signed a new contract for Jonah Williams. No, not that Jonah Williams. It's a defensive lineman, Jonah Williams, who signed a 1-year deal with the team. That's going to be another depth piece. We talked about Roy Lopez and the value and worth that he had for the Cardinals. Should have gotten him a bigger contract. He had a great year with the Detroit Lions. Comes back now to the Cardinals on a 2-year, $11.5 million deal. And the last signing that we can talk about today is official, is tight end Tegan Quitoriano, I believe is how that's going to be pronounced, or Quitoriano. There's no quit in the Cardinals, but there is maybe a quit in Tegan Quitoriano. He's going to be probably that 4th tight end with the Cardinals replacing, I believe it was Josiah Delguarda or Delgadera from the Jacksonville Jaguars a year ago. That's going to be your 4th tight end for the team. That's going to kind of cap up. So when we're looking at this in free agency, Marcos, let's give overall grades for how the Cardinals did. Because I would say that when you're talking about the Cardinals, if your ultimate goal is for this to be a team with a top 3 pick next year, you're probably saying they accomplished most of the depth pieces that went out to sign. They didn't get any splash signings. It's not a team that I think is looking to be super competitive, but they did get at least most of the different spots filled. I think that you'd probably give this a B- to a C+. Some people would probably give this an F just because of the quarterback situation that they had with Gardner Minshew. But I think that if they'd signed any quarterback, such as a Geno Smith or a Kirk Cousins, to any sort of a deal, you're probably talking about picking between that 6 to 10 range. What we've seen with the Cardinals in their last, I believe it was 36 to 39 starts, you've got 3 wins for Jacoby Brissett and Gardner Minshew in that time span. That is not a winning quarterback room. It means that the Cardinals are going to be likely shifting to finding another quarterback of some degree, whether in the NFL draft or within next year's NFL draft, assuming that they don't find someone in free agency in 2027.
Yeah, and it's crazy that we're a year removed from having a team that we thought was going to make it to the playoffs and get to that next step. We did obviously have that 2-0 start, and the fact that the Cardinals were bringing back a lot of the same pieces that competed and had the lead in the NFC West right before the bye, and where we plummeted with the same exact roster with these added pieces now, that I would say I'm probably giving him like a B minus or a C plus,
Now,
mostly because of depth
I'll say
pieces.
that we're grading on a curve here a little bit, Marcos, because we see that the goal is for the Cardinals to be a tanking team. If we wanted to grade this straight up in free agency, straight up for how exciting it is, how high is you're bringing in, the caliber of players you're signing, you're probably giving this a C minus, right? Like, we're giving this a higher grade because this is what the Cardinals are doing, filling needs, being ready. But we recognize that this is a tanking team for the most part. And that's, I think, one of the biggest areas ultimately of grading on a curve we have to be able to mention is that it's probably a worse grade in terms of what we're looking at, but it's probably in terms of when you're saying we want to go out and have a top 3 pick for next year, they accomplished their goal. So we're going to give it a slightly higher grade of how they addressed it, the players that they brought in, some of the places and how they filled out their depth. It's just that we're having a hard time figuring out what this team is because so much of this team is built around what happens at the end of the year leading into the 2027 NFL draft and what they do at quarterback.
What if they draft a quarterback this draft? Do you think they're still trying to obtain a top 3 pick for next draft?
I think that's a perfect segue into talking about who are the quarterback fits for the Arizona Cardinals here. Let's talk a little bit about if they take a quarterback, where should they take a quarterback, and who that quarterback should be. Let's take a look, first of all, at the actual quarterbacks that the Arizona Cardinals could potentially get. I'm going to pull up the PFF big board that we have when starting our NFL draft. We know one quarterback who will not be there, and I'll say at least as far as for the latest and greatest, as far as some news for the most part, I'll maybe not break news necessarily, but I fully believe that the Cardinals offered to trade up to the number 1 overall pick with the Las Vegas Raiders, and I believe the Raiders told them no. I think there's plenty of teams that reached out to see if they could get Fernando Mendoza that were all told no. And the Cardinals, I think, were probably one of those teams. I would not be shocked if they offered their first this year, their first next year, and a first or second at some point in the future, and were told no, because Fernando Mendoza, coming off of the Heisman, coming off a national championship, even if he's not going to be up there with some of the other quarterbacks for the most part, it's just one of the places where that was not available. So let's talk about who the quarterbacks are this year. Now, the number 2 quarterback that you have, at least, that most people have talked about, I know it's been talked about at PHNX, it's been talked about on other mock draft sites, is Ty Simpson. Ty Simpson, of course, when we're taking a quick look at him, he's a 6'1" quarterback, about 210 pounds, a little bit smaller. Closest comparison to him, it'd be a Brock Purdy type of quarterback. Now, he's only got 9 starts at the collegiate level. He's a smart kid, showed some great throws that were there on tape. But also he's shown that he's not going to be the biggest or strongest kid, so there's going to be questions about how much of the upside's there. He's sneaky athletic, which means that he can run around and scramble. The closest comparison people have said is let's put the highest comparisons up there. You're talking about Brock Purdy or Tony Romo, where you're never going to be in that elite or top 10 gang of quarterbacks, but you're going to be a consistent top 12 quarterback year in and year out, where you don't see the bottom of the floor fall out potentially because of the mind and the arm he's able to get things to in that regard. You want to talk about one of the lower types of places that's there, you're going to talk about probably bad Brock Purdy, or you're going to be talking about a quarterback with middling, limited tools, and limited starts who actually doesn't perform. There's some other lower end guys that are there for comps, but I think one of the biggest things with figuring out how these comparisons work, Marcos, is you got to find your high end comp for the best case scenario. You also have to be willing to find a low end comp, and I think with Ty Simpson only having 9 starts, there are some definite low end comps that you could have for a quarterback of his caliber, and that's something the Cardinals do need to consider, and part of why I don't see the Cardinals taking him at number 3 overall is because there is a floor to him that can go a little bit lower.
Yeah, I don't believe that they're even going to contemplate doing that. I think they're just going to trade back. And if they do want Tyson him, or they do want to lock up that pick that's somewhat, I believe it might be a late first round pick. I know that it's saying right there as the rank at 42, meaning they're like, he can go at the 42 pick and whatnot. Obviously, if that was the case, Cardinals wouldn't even be contemplating about trading up or trading back or anything like that, or just pick him with their second round pick. But in the first round, there's absolutely no chance that they're going to take him that high. Now, is there any talks of them trading back from the third overall pick? Well, we're dealing with Monty Ossenfort. He did this the last time we went through the cycle of trying to go through a tank year, or at least being able to get as many picks as we possibly can to rebuild our year. So he did so by trading back. Of course, I don't believe that ended up working out with us, but it's I'm not the general manager here. It's going to be Monty Ossenfort. So we're trying to figure out what is in his mind. And I do know that quarterback's probably not going to be it till the second round.
And taking a look at a quarterback who's 6'2", with maybe not with good arm strength, but not elite arm strength. One of the comparisons that you can see to him would be Case Keenum. Case Keenum is one of those guys, at least, that was playing in the CUSA. He ended up having a great career, but he was ultimately a backup quarterback. Which, if you're talking about backup quarterbacks like Mac Jones or Case Keenum, guys at least who maybe are higher-end backups that could be a top 32 starter in the league, you're probably not getting too much of an improvement over Jacoby Brissett. You're hoping for that lightning in a bottle, Brock Purdy, like being able to have very complete play, or being able to be someone who could plug into like a Kirk Cousins in that sort of a system. Romo is the highest end. That's where you're talking about a guy who can make plays with his legs, has a big enough arm, is able to run effective offenses with some good receivers where you can throw the ball up or hit guys in stride and be able to run around and make plays with your legs. Now, as far as where Ty Simpson's going to go, if we know the Cardinals aren't going to take him at 3, then the Cardinals would have to be looking to trade back. Now, if the Cardinals would be looking to trade back, someone's got to be willing to trade up, Marcos. And the problem that we've seen within a lot of spaces is that the Cardinals are probably not going to be able to trade back far enough into a spot of number 4, number 5, number 6, number 7. And if they still take Ty Simpson, it's still going to be considered a reach because he's considered to be a round 2 quarterback who gets pushed up into the first round based off of teams just needing quarterbacks. The Jets need a quarterback. The Browns need a quarterback. A team like the Miami Dolphins need a quarterback. So when you're talking about where Ty Simpson's range could go, you're probably going to say that the highest that Ty Simpson could go would probably be number 6 to the Browns. Like, that would be going to Todd Monken's system. They've got no quarterback there. They probably are in a win-now sort of mode with Andrew Berry as the general manager, who's been there for years. That would be an instant quarterback upgrade, at least for them in their room. It could be an instant quarterback upgrade for the Cardinals, but the biggest difference between the Cardinals and the Browns is that the Browns have 2 first-round picks this next year, one at pick 24, one at pick number 6. So the Browns, theoretically, with enough draft capital, could take a quarterback if they feel like we definitely want to, and then trade back up if they wanted to get another talented player, or they could simply be one of those teams that takes another swing at the quarterback position elsewhere. I don't think that the Miami Dolphins, after their signing of Malik Willis, are going to take Ty Simpson at pick number 11. It doesn't seem like it's right. One of the interesting teams that could take him, though, is in this 13 to 16 range, the Los Angeles Rams. Could they take him to be the heir apparent to Matthew Stafford, or how about the New York Jets? Do they have interest in taking someone like him? That's an interesting place, because after that, it becomes a little clearer, I think, to find where Ty Simpson's fit would be. So late first is where most people are picking for him. So that means that you're basically taking a second-round quarterback somewhere in the late first round. So that would look you at a team like 21 for the Pittsburgh Steelers. That would put you in a place of pick 24, the Browns. So the Cardinals, if they do end up deciding that they're wanting to be in on Ty Simpson, and I think that this is one of the things the Cardinals could potentially want, they would have to then trade up and get ahead of the Browns at 24, or get ahead of the Steelers potentially at pick 21. And then you still have other teams that are able to pick ahead of them, such as the Jets at 33. And an interesting team there, could the Texans, with their 28th overall pick, take a quarterback to compete with C.J. Stroud? I don't think that's going to be the case, but this seems to be the area for Ty Simpson. If Ty Simpson, I think, goes 24, if the Browns pass him a second time, then I think this range in here with the Bills through the Seahawks, maybe Bills through the Patriots actually, becomes the range where Ty Simpson could go. I don't see the Dolphins taking him after doing all of that with Malik Willis. I think that they're more likely locked into taking some defensive talent and some offensive line talent as well. That means that if the Cardinals are looking for him in this range, and if he goes in this range, I think that they don't get him, because they would either have to take him at 3 or trade up high enough. I don't think that's enough to rule out Ty Simpson completely. I think that he is a possibility for the Cardinals. And one of the crazier things too, Marcos, if you take Ty Simpson, if you're a Cardinals fan, and you still finish with the top 3 pick, I don't think that it would rule them out from taking a quarterback next season. I think that it would definitely still be on the table for them if they can get a better quarterback in next year's draft.
Yeah, I agree. It's just not going to be a case where we're just going to go ahead and draft somebody, and we're not going to draft them anywhere near like the top of this first round. It's always going to be somewhere between 24 and like 32 and whatnot, or 33. Obviously, the Jets are just ahead of us and whatnot, and the only case for even wanting to draft a quarterback like Ty Simpson this high is because he's not going to start right away in our system. He's going to be one of those quarterbacks that we probably sit for maybe a year, hopefully like for a year or two, depending on what direction this franchise is going. We're not going to have this guy just be thrown out into the wolves. That's definitely not what we want to do, because of the fact that these quarterbacks going from the college game to the pros, it's such a big like change in scheme wise and what they have to do. A lot of these quarterbacks don't even go under center, so then you're going to have to teach them how to go under center, how to like read defenses when they turn their back to the defense, and then whip their head right around again. So it's one of those circumstances where if you even do draft this guy, I get that the sentiment is don't draft him and whatnot, but at this point, the Cardinals showed what they wanted to do. They didn't want to. They weren't in on Malik Willis and let him go to Miami, who just traded their wide receiver to the Denver Broncos. So their number one receiver is gone. So I'm not even sure what weapons he has down there. It's looking like I have no idea why they would even be in on a guy like Malik Willis if they're going to be trading away their wide receivers like that. And the Cardinals didn't want him. So now we have to see who the heir apparent is going to be, or if we could draft somebody who could turn out to be like a Tyler Shaw, who is the starter over with the Saints and whatnot. And obviously, you had Jackson Dart taking over for the New York Giants. We need some sort of direction here.
Yeah, that's something I think that's going to be really interesting, because for me, I'm in the camp of just don't waste the draft pick on Ty Simpson. I'm not the Cardinals. I think the Cardinals are going to be in on Ty Simpson for the most part, just because he's the closest thing that you have to someone who's got the athleticism and the arm strength, and did show in his first 8 games that there's a chance that he could turn into one of those Tony Romo, Brock Purdy type quarterbacks. Then you get the last 8 games where he got hurt and the Alabama's run game suffered, and he took a lot of hits, a lot of sacks, and got hurt. It showed that the bottom can definitely fall out for him. I think that it's a place to be seen where we're going to be on Ty Simpson watch until draft day comes in Arizona. My best bet that I've had is that the Cardinals are going to look to trade up. They're going to have to probably get ahead of the Browns. I don't know if they're going to be able to do it without teams asking for 2027 draft capital, and I don't think the Cardinals are going to want to give that up. I think the Cardinals are not going to be a team that should give up 2027 draft capital. And when it's considered to be a much better draft, it would especially cost them if it would be, say, they're give up a second round this year and a second round next year, and you're still keeping your first. Okay, like, if you're desperate for a quarterback where Monty Austinfort's job is in danger, then I would argue you shouldn't have brought him back anyway. You probably are in a space, if you're Monty Austinfort, you may just be doomed with the way that the roster and free agency has been handled thus far. I wouldn't mind if they said, hey, we can take a swing on Ty Simpson, but I would rather have it be at pick 34 you take a trade on and not give up a third-round pick to have to move up, as that's what it would cost to get you into the middle of the first round, to get you ahead of a team like Cleveland that has 2 first-round picks, ahead of a team like the Dolphins that maybe would be a wild card at the position, and a team like the Steelers who could potentially just take him at 21st overall and say, we've got our heir apparent, and he'll study for a year under Aaron Rodgers. He'll copy a lot of what Aaron Rodgers does, and we'll trot him out there in the next year's draft, because the Steelers know their team is good enough with him and with Aaron and with Ty Simpson. They're not going to be picking in the top of the 2027 NFL draft, whereas the Arizona Cardinals, most likely, if not most definitely, are probably going to be in that spot. For the heck of it, let's go ahead here, and we're going to take a look at the next quarterback on this list, Garrett Nussmeier, a guy who is about 6'1", about 205 pounds, was often injured. To me, his closest comparison is probably someone like Jimmy Garoppolo. So you're not talking about a higher-end quarterback. You're talking about someone who can fit the system, would be able to execute the system, can make all of the throws, but may not be elite at making all of the throws, especially off-schedule throws. And he's someone who, when I see him, and you take a look at where he may be available, he's a guy that probably is going to be available when you're talking about entering round 3 for the Arizona Cardinals. That would be probably the closest draft range. So you're talking about after round 2 in the Cardinals pick, this would be at the top of, I would say, round 3. So that'd be pick 65. So if you're a Cardinals fan, you are going to draft an edge rusher or an offensive tackle. You then draft another edge rusher or offensive tackle. You enter round 3. You want a quarterback. There's 3 guys that stand out in that range. 2 of them specifically for me, and that would be Garrett Nussmeier and Drew Aller. Nussmeier is the Jimmy Garoppolo type of guy, at least, that's going to be there. He's someone who is, like we said, going to be interesting because he may get his stock boosted up as high as into the second round, but because it's a bad quarterback class, Marcos, I don't think that he'll be an option for the Cardinals, or if he was an option for the Cardinals, he won't be a second round option for the Cardinals. At the earliest, I think he would go in round 3.
Yeah, he definitely most likely will be going somewhere in round 3, early in round 3, late second round and whatnot. And just like you mentioned, there's not really much like any type of top end traits and whatnot. It's no joke that they say this is the wrong year to want a quarterback or need a quarterback, and that 2027 is basically where everybody's trying to put their eggs in their basket and whatnot, which is why I continuously keep making the argument, get somebody who's like a BPA person. But anyways, we're talking about quarterback here. It's just there's nothing like impressive about Nussmeier. He just seems like a person that also needs to sit, but he's not going to give you top end when it comes to like moving a team or like making a team go higher than what their floor is and whatnot. He's just going to be somebody who might even just portray themselves as just a backup in this draft, and it is what it is.
Yeah, Lance Zierlein, NFL analyst comparison for him was Drew Lock, which has legitimate arm talent, but as far as diagnosing coverages, going through progressions, playing as a gunslinger, that's part of where there's going to be negatives. Like there's going to be some interceptions that we're going to see from Nussmeier as a result of some of that playing with that mentality and that mindset. It's a place where I like him as an option in round 3 better than I like Ty Simpson as an option in round 2, but that's also because I'm looking at Nussmeier as my developmental backup behind Jacoby, behind Gardner, who would then be the backup quarterback that you could try to flip into a draft pick behind a future starter if things work out great with Mike LaFleur and with his system. And that is one of the interesting cases is we don't know how much of a QB guru LaFleur is, but we do know he's coming from the Shanahan tree. You're looking for a Shanahan-style quarterback. I think Nussmeier actually could be able to, with the timing and some of what he's been able to show, being able to show mobility in the pocket, being able to not worry as much sacks for the most part, being able to step up and climb in the pocket. I think that it's one of those areas where he could end up with the scheme if it's able to get guys open. He could be one of those guys that develops. It's one of the places where you definitely are not going to say he's a better quarterback or a better option than the likes of Ty Simpson, but you are going to be looking at some intrigue with him. Now, the guy who is also intriguing in a lot of different ways is Drew Aller. So Drew Aller, he fits the prototypical quarterback mode, 6'5", 235 pounds. And he's mobile, he's got athleticism. He just has struggled, at least, where every single time that he has seemed like he's got the chance to put it all together, he's either gotten injured and missed quite a bit of the time for the season, or he's really struggled, at least, with inconsistency. With the touch or ball place has been a hindrance. There's been some times where you'll see the ball where he's throwing to guys and trying to throw the ball to the spot where the guy is versus trying to hit the guy in stride. There's also areas, at least, where the question was about him mentally. You don't question Ty Simpson mentally. You don't question Garrett Nussmeier mentally. There's times where the coverages can confuse some of those guys. That the one guy that didn't really get confused by coverage was, in some cases, Ty Simpson, and I would also say Fernando Mendoza. But Drew Aller, it was definitely a spot where he's going to be a guy that you're going to have to develop a little bit mentally. One of the things that you can talk about, at least, is that he's good against zone coverage. Like, he'll be anticipatory and can beat zone coverage. If you're playing in the NFC West, you're going to be getting a lot of zone coverage on the first couple of downs, and then it's going to go man-to-man with, which we'll see how it changes for the Niners, but that's something that we definitely saw against the Seahawks and then against the Rams with their new look in the secondary now, having a brand new man coverage winner that they just traded for from the Kansas City Chiefs. I like the idea of Drew Eller better than I think I like the actual Drew Eller. So with that potential, I would look at him in terms of drafting him not maybe in round 3 because of the inconsistencies, but in round 4. And that may be the spot for Nussmeier as well. Drew Eller, I think, is a round 4 target for the Cardinals. Fits everything you want in a day 3 guy as far as he's got all of the potential upside athletically, but has shown that he needs to put it all together. If the Cardinals took him at round 3, I wouldn't be mad, but I think that there is definitely a limitation to him just because there is all of the raw talent is there. But then the question, of course, is if you got all the raw talent and you never put it together, why didn't you put it together at the college level? And that's one of the biggest reasons why he's not being talked about as a first or even a second rounder in the NFL draft.
Yeah, apparently, had he just gone and declared for the NFL draft last season, he obviously chose to remain in college and whatnot. His draft stock was in the first round as of last year. His draft stock tanked down to like even possibly not even drafted in the NFL draft. Obviously, he is going to go because of the weak like QB draft, like the QB draft year that we're having. Of this year. And if you're a team, you're going to take your chance on somebody who has these tools, the big body, hey, is he the next Josh Allen? Which, of course, Josh Allen was such an alien that he went in the top 10 of the 2018 draft. So he has the tools. Drew Aller has the arm. The issue is, as you just mentioned, is he able to like see defenses, mentality-wise? Has he able to put it together? Is he just tough, mentally tough in there? Can he handle criticism? And, can he take advantage of all those traits? It's just a guy that you want to take a chance at. I would be okay with taking this guy in the 4th round if he's going to be my project guy. More than Nussmeier, I believe. I would just go for Drew Aller in the 4th.
Yeah, if you're going to be talking about a guy in Nussmeier who's got injury questions that the medicals are going to be a concern, it's going to be a similar type of gunslinger, I would agree with you that I would probably rather take Aller over Nussmeier. I think as far as the different options that are there, Aller in the 4th over Nussmeier in the 3rd would be one of the places that I would definitely look at as far as taking a earlier flyer than many teams would. Again, it's not a great year for quarterbacks. And speaking of not a great year for quarterbacks, we do have to talk a little bit about what I call kind of the bottom 3. We talked about these 3 quarterbacks in a row here. We will talk about the other 3 that are after that. One of the guys that we do need to talk about also in Carson Beck, he does not have the arm strength that we saw. He got picked off on a deep ball in the national championship game, but he can be effective enough to run an offense, be a solid backup, has a bit of mobility. He's one of those guys, at least, that maybe you're talking about someone who, if you're going to be wanting to push Gardner Minshew for the backup spot, Carson Beck makes a great example of that. But he just doesn't have NFL level draft projections as far as that arm strength is limiting. So you're talking about he's got the prototypical size at 6'5", 233, doesn't have the prototypical athleticism. And when you're talking about the weakness of his arm, the closest comparison that Lance Zierlein has for him is Kenny Pickett. Now, Kenny Pickett, the reason why he busted was Kenny Pickett should have been a 3rd-round quarterback. Instead, he went in the 1st round because it was a legendarily bad 2022 draft class. He was the best quarterback. Steelers forced the pick. If the Cardinals decide to take Carson Beck in round 2 or 3, I think it's a similar forcing of the pick where he's just a guy that's going to be a backup only. There's no starting potential. Each of the other guys we've talked about, I think, have starting potential. This is the guy that I think is the first clear backup on the list. He's going to throw catchable balls. He'll show some maturity. He's also a lot older. He's, I believe, a 23-year-old prospect, so he's going to be 24 by the time that you're talking about the regular season going. He had to bounce around for a couple years at different schools, eventually landed at Miami and was playing for a national championship game. He's, of the 3 guys, the higher floor potentially than Drew Aller and Garrett Nussmeier, but I would argue he's got the lowest ceiling of those 3 of the guys who are in this range of quarterbacks.
Yeah, it's kind of depressing. I was just thinking just now that you mentioned about Kenny Pickett and the draft class that he was in. Last year was a very, very bad QB draft class as well. I mean, what's going on with these quarterbacks that they're just not portraying, not so much portraying themselves, but like
you got to pick at number 1, brother. Like if you're not picking at number 1, there's no guarantee that you're going to be getting any good quarterback whatsoever. And even last year we saw the Titans struggled with Cam Ward as the number 1 overall pick. It's a difficult business when you're not picking with the number 1 pick. Even the Cardinals with the top 3 pick this year no quarterback to be found.
Yeah, that's how it kind of is. That first quarterback and the second quarterback in the draft has a really big drop off, and I'm thinking about that with Carson Beck. That the drop off between him and the talent is just so limited, and it just drops off a cliff. Yes, he has a higher floor, but just like you mentioned, he has the best type of projection that we have for him is a backup. That's sad.
Yeah. It's a tough year to need a quarterback. It's just a tough quarterback class. Speaking of which, the next three quarterbacks we'll go over briefly. These are guys that I don't know if the Cardinals should draft. If you do, it'll be because you've drafted a bunch of players from rounds 1 through 4, and you're taking a flyer on this guy in round 5 or 6 just to kind of push someone in the room, get some starts, get an upgrade. Let's say that Jacoby Brissett goes out, he gets hurt. Gardner Minshew comes in, he gets hurt. You're going to want to have a better option going out there than Keaton Slovis. That would be where you start to get into some of these guys that are here. So we talk about Cade Klubnik, another guy who seemed like he was on the up and up in 2024. Some people thought he could be an early push for the number 1 overall pick to start this year. He really struggled a lot. He's got 6'2", 210 pounds, so he's going to be about average when it comes to quarterbacks as far as the physical measurables that you're going to see. He struggled a lot. He didn't end up seeing his completion percentage improve. His yards per attempt went down. And he went from 36 touchdowns to a bad Clemson offense to 19. It's one of the places where you're getting a guy on the downside versus on the upside, which is usually what you want when you're talking about projecting. You want guys to grow and get better at each different level. He's one of the guys that could be up there with Beck and some of the others, but unlike Beck, he got worse this past year versus better. You've got Jalen Daniels, the quarterback out of Kansas, who's always been more of a projection guy. He's got some dual threat ability. At 6 foot, he's a little bit shorter at 220 pounds. I don't see the Cardinals taking a quarterback shorter than 6'2" right now. I think the only reason why they took Gardner Minshew, who I believe Minshew measures in at 6 foot, is just because he's got experience in the league. I think the Cardinals want to get a little bit bigger and taller. I think Daniels is a developmental sort of quarterback. He does have some interesting ability for the most part. And then, of course, there's Taylon Green, the quarterback at Arkansas, who is essentially just a huge projection. Big guy, 6'6", 235, super athletic. You can run around. Some people even wondered if he would be something similar to, you think of that quarterback down with the Saints for a number of years in Taysom Hill. That's one of the comparisons people have had, is saying, hey, take this guy round 6, run another kind of athletic / quarterback package for him. He's an older guy as well at 23.4 years of age. Those are kind of the next 3. And then there's about 2 other quarterbacks that I think we can probably talk about for the most part today. One of those being Sawyer Robertson, out of Baylor. At 6'4", 220, he's got prototypical size, a prototypical arm. He also didn't have as good of a year, got injured, but he seemed like he was on the up and up with 31 touchdowns in 2025, 28 the year before. He's been someone who at least has done a bit better over as the time has gone on. The last guy we'll talk about is Haynes King, who is 6'3", 215, about average out of, I think it was Georgia Tech. Yeah, Georgia Tech was where he played this year. He had about 3,000 yards and what was mostly a heavy run offense. Georgia Tech just doesn't really throw the ball as much. They've always just been like more of a triple option unique school in that regard. 14 touchdowns to 6 interceptions. It's one of the other options that you can talk about, at least for the most part, that we can see. And Grandizer is, of course, pointing out here in our chat. Did you order your Minshew Mania Cardinals t-shirt? No, I did not order the Minshew Mania Cardinals t-shirt. We're talking about Cardinals draft prospects specifically, so we can avoid talking about Minshew Mania here. Marcos, it's not pretty when we're talking about the developmental quarterbacks as well, but those are some guys on day 3 if the Cardinals decide they want to take a swing at the bat. Those are 3 of the quarterbacks who fit them. I don't think that Diego Pavia fits them. He's the 5'9" short quarterback who had a lot. I think he's 6 foot, but I think he's a little bit shorter than that. It probably measured in 5'10" to 5'11". Super productive this last year at 29 touchdowns to 8 interceptions on a good Vanderbilt team, but I think that he basically speaks NFL invite to camp, doesn't have the arm strength to be able to make it. You're kind of talking about like who's the guy a couple of years, like a worst case scenario, talking about a Matt Barkley, a backup or a number 3 quarterback who bounces around to different teams. That's his best case scenario. I don't see him as a draftable target for the Cardinals. I think you should take advantage, try to swing for the fences and hope you can find a Brock Purdy versus taking a guy who's definitely going to be a backup in someone like Diego Pavia.
Yeah, so one of the guys that was in the mock draft Monday, I forgot what his name was. He was the LA Rams person that was drafted for the Cardinals. And he chose Pavia in the 7th round, and he was just getting. It was almost like I was wondering what's the problem with him and what's funny about him, and I just realized it has to do with the size. I thought it had to do something with his character.
Yeah, no, and he's unique at least. Like he's got a bunch of confidence with him, which I'll never knock a guy for having confidence. It's one of the places where it feels like Marcos. To me, this is a 3 quarterback draft. You're not going to get Fernando Mendoza, so you're going to have to see what you can do with Ty Simpson, and then maybe you end up getting Ty Simpson. I think you'd let another team be the one that takes the risk on Ty Simpson. So I would go and target someone like Drew Allar, if I could, round 3 or round 4, to see if I could get that upside of having all the physical elements. Hope that the intangibles will follow through, do a bit of mechanical work on him, and at the end of the year, you get him a couple of starts, see how he does. Other than that, I don't think the Cardinals should be in the quarterback market. Now, there is an interesting case, at least, of being the Cardinals in the quarterback market, but not for a draft pick this year. So just earlier today, the Eagles traded for and acquired Andy Dalton from the Panthers. The Panthers went out and signed a backup quarterback. They were hoping to trade Andy Dalton, get that contract off the books. The Eagles now have a veteran quarterback who can distribute the ball. If Jalen Hurts struggles or gets hurt, they'll still be able to continue. He was able to, I believe, win a couple of games and threw the ball like all over the yard when Bryce Young in 2024 was missing for a couple of games before he came back. This move has made a lot of people wonder, okay, then, you've now got 3 quarterbacks in your roster, Jalen Hurts, Andy Dalton, and Tanner McKee. So the question then is, could Tanner McKee be available? JP Acosta earlier today works for CBS, said, who's giving up a deal from McKee? His guess is the Cardinals. And Tanner McKee, when we talk about him, he is someone who showed off and showed pretty well in the preseason games that he's never played in, I believe, a regular season game for the Eagles. A lot of people wonder if they're moving on from him. He fits the prototypical size and has got decent arm strength. He is, I believe, 6'6", 231 pounds with some athleticism. Showed enough as a capable backup. When you looked at him in the draft process, the comparison that they had for him was around 6'7" quarterback. He could throw a few more interceptions, but has good enough developed arm talent within a high-functioning offense. He's got some heavier feet for the most part, is the biggest downside. So he was someone that actually progressed and grew a little bit in his NFL role. The best comparison for him, get this, Marcos, his comparison coming out was Jacoby Brissett for a lot of people. That would all of a sudden make sense as far as why the Cardinals could potentially look at someone like McKee. Could you get someone similar enough to Jacoby who could learn behind him, be able to be someone you could try as a spot starter even, say, hey, guess what, kid, we're giving you the reins, we'll make you our starter, we can always fall back to Jacoby Brissett, or you start Jacoby out for the season, put in Tanner McKee at some point if Jacoby ends up struggling, if the team needs to win some games, and be able to give him a chance. He would cost probably a round 6 draft pick, maybe a round 7 draft pick. I would much rather give a 6th or 7th round draft pick for Tanner McKee and then keep Tanner McKee around as my backup, knowing I get him under contract for at least 1 to 2 more years on that rookie contract. Jacoby is a free agent next year. Gardner Minshew is the one quarterback you'd have on the roster entering the 2027 NFL draft. You could potentially upgrade the backup position with Tanner McKee and have him under contract for a few more years. He was drafted in 2023, so you'll have him under contract through, I believe, the 2027, I think, is the last season. So he'll go for at least 2 years. He's under contract. 26. No, I take that back. 2023, 24, 25, 26. This would be the last year of his contract. You could potentially swing for the fences there and be able to get a slightly better backup quarterback option and then give him a trial run to then sign him as a backup following this upcoming draft season. What do you think about Tanner McKee potentially being an option for the Cardinals? It, to me, isn't the same as drafting a quarterback, but a guy who's been in the NFL, is able to master and know an NFL playbook, would potentially be familiar with studying and in-game design. I think it gives you a slightly better option at a young guy than it does at Jacoby or Gardner Minshew for the year, and then you can put all your eggs into that 2027 basket if you're the Cardinals.
Well, so there's a couple of things about Tanner McKee that's kind of interesting. So one, I keep hearing, well, it's been like a couple of years now that Tanner McKee was somebody that they wanted to stash and keep on the roster, mostly because of the fact that they know what they know what he is in practice. They know what he can do, and they for the most part have tried to not put this guy up for like a trade or anything like that. There's even been some rumors about moving off of Jalen Hurts and having Tanner McKee be the next person. It's just it feels like they really like this guy in the organization. So to me, when people are talking about, hey, we like who's going to make a deal for Tanner McKee and whatnot, it's kind of hard for me to believe that they're even going to want to deal this guy away. He would have been a good trade for me had it not been for the Gardner Minshew situation. If they had never signed Gardner Minshew and this guy was actually available, I would have been like, yeah, this guy would have been good to have like as a project guy, maybe even as a backup. And I'm not 100% sure about this, but I think he did come in for some snaps at the end of the last season. I could be wrong. I think it was at the end of the 2025 season.
Yep.
They had, obviously, they had I think benched, like not benched, but like they basically held out Jalen Hurts, and I'm not sure who the second tier quarterback was there. They gave Tanner McKee some snaps, and he looked really good. I believe he threw like 2 touchdowns on his only 2 drives that he even played and whatnot. So there is some film on Tanner McKee. So at least we could do some evaluations on him. But he looked pretty. I mean, he looked pretty good. So that's what I've heard. At the very least, I believe I heard it on the Bootleg Football podcast that he is the guy that they're trying to just keep on the roster.
Yeah, I think with this acquisition, though, for Andy Dalton, I think Tanner McKee is able to be on the move now because they've stashed him and kept him around, but you just made a trade for an obvious backup quarterback. Unless you're going to be like saying, hey, we're going to be potentially rolling with him if if it doesn't work out, then maybe. But I think one of the things we can look at with, like you talked about, with some of the film and some of those throws that he made in his first start, he looked like the prototypical type of quarterback style when you're talking about being able to make plays off of play action, being able to throw the ball down the field. He was able to essentially go out and get that win against the and made some plays from the pocket, similar to, like I said, his comparison ultimately is a Jacoby Brissett with a bit more athleticism. Not a ton more athleticism, like he's not a running quarterback, but being able to execute the LaFleur offense in one that's similar with what Philly ran last year with a ton of bootlegs, a ton of play action. That's something that I could see potentially, and it would not shock me if the Cardinals just said, hey, you know what, we're not going to take any of these quarterbacks this year. We're going to trade for a backup quarterback from the Philadelphia Eagles. I know people are going to get Kevin Cobb flashbacks, but it's someone who could potentially give you a option in 2027, and at worst case scenario, if he's going to be an upgrade at your backup quarterback spot or can go out and even win you a couple games like he did last year, I'm all for it. Sometimes you just get your quarterback and you'll find a Matt Schaub who's sitting as a 6th-round pick. They sit and develop in a certain situation. They do pretty well. Sometimes you get guys that are just there and they can end up making NFL starts, and they get more starts than a guy who gets drafted in the first round and absolutely ends up bombing out. So one of the biggest bombs that I can remember, one of the biggest first-round draft butts of all time was Peyton. Oh, gosh, what's his name at least for that one there? I'll remember it in here in just a second. Paxton Lynch. Never even really started again. Like, he started one game, and he wasn't even good enough to be able to, like, stick around as a backup, was quickly out of the league. That guy was a first-round pick. Things can get kind of crazy. If the Cardinals end up saying that Tanner McKee, they want to bring him in and give him an opportunity to start or be a backup, I would all be in for it because it would not be a high cost. And you would probably have someone with upside who could potentially be able to go out there and be able to run your offense behind Jacoby Brissett and give you some youth at the position. Like Gardner Minshew, he's approaching 30. Jacoby Brissett is already past 30. So you're talking about needing to get some young blood on the Cardinals. That would be one of those options that I think you could go with.
Yeah, so that's definitely somebody I would somewhat have gotten excited for had we made that obvious trade. We're gonna bury him in our
maybe we still will. That trade that deal was just done today, 7 hours ago for Andy Dalton. Maybe the Cardinals still will. Maybe they won't. I think there's a chance that it could be the Cardinals would trade for him after the fact. Like if they don't get Ty Simpson, maybe he gets dealt during the draft. That would be another possibility that we can't rule out. So, but that'll be one of the things that we'll see.
I don't like him being buried in the depth chart. I really would want to have him as our primary backup because I want to see what he can do. The Eagles offense is very similar to what the Cliff Kingsbury offense was
Right.
shotgun heavy because Jalen Hurts is a shotgun, a shotgun heavy QB read option type of quarterback that's just gonna either fake the handoff and take it up himself, but he has to do that in the shotgun offense with the static, with basically almost no motion, having just like, hey, I got better, wide receivers than you. I could drop in the bucket. I'll out talent you guys and stuff. That's the type of offense they run over there. So having a situation with Tanner McKee running an offense like that, and then you switch him over, have him play more under center with a lot more motion and
Yeah.
whatnot, and him being able to distribute the ball the way he was doing, and then doing it with that type of accuracy, I would say that would have been like possibly something I would get excited about. Now I know not a lot of
Yeah.
people get excited about
I
backup
know.
quarterback.
Okay, no one's going to get excited about Tanner McKee except for us, maybe, because of just understanding what the Cardinals could do and how their team is being built. We're people who, if the Cardinals made that deal, we would have some excitement over that. It would be a new quarterback coming in. You would have some of that. That would also be able to reignite some of the fan base. And if he was able to compete with Jacoby Brissett, would say, hey, Jacoby's the starter. Guess what? We're bringing Tanner McKee in, and we're going to have a good old-fashioned quarterback battle in camp. Suddenly, I've got reasons again to watch if I'm a Cardinals fan. You got the established guy in Jacoby against some new blood in Tanner McKee. I would much rather have that than the current quarterback room, and I would much rather have that low investment than the Cardinals just spending a haul to have to move up or taking it pick 34 overall over an offensive tackle or an edge rusher in Ty Simpson.
Yeah, exactly. And he has, I mean, Tanner McKee, you saw the size in him. He's got big size, so he's going to be able to see all parts of the field. It's just the question of if he can make that adjustment. But he's an NFL quarterback for a reason. He's going to take whatever scheme he's going to be given to him. And of course, you have an offensive mind like somebody who at least knows the Shanahan Kubiak type of offense and being able to mold their quarterbacks to do whatever they need to do. They don't have anything to worry about when it comes to his vision. So. Yeah, I would get excited. I just wish we never had. If this was the circumstance, I wish he would have just been the backup for us if we would have made the deal. But you're right. Like if we don't take a quarterback in the draft, that could still be in the cards for us.
Yep. I totally agree. It could be in the cards. We'll see if it is in the cards for the Arizona Cardinals to trade for Tanner McKee. I think that it's possible that this could be a draft day trade where he ends up on the trade block, rumored before because of this Dalton signing. And he could definitely take over if Jalen Hurts struggles and be able to run a different style of offense because Jalen Hurts is so limited in terms of, just like you said, as being a shotgun quarterback similar to Kyler Murray. Before we get to our overtime, Marcos, let's go ahead and start this over, and we're going to do a mock draft for the Arizona Cardinals. Let's go ahead and get that ready with a 7-round mock draft, and then we're going to go ahead and publish our final comments. We've got 2 picks that are right up the get-go with Fernando Mendoza. They've got Sonny Styles off the board. The Cardinals in this spot is going to be in an interesting case because we've got Arvell Reese is still on the board, who's got all of the potential, but would probably have to start out at inside linebacker and then move some to the edge. You got Reuben Bain Jr., who's my personal favorite, who's got shorter arms, but was able to make plays as an edge rusher, especially against the run. You've got David Bailey, of course, is still on the board, has got the prototypical size and strength. Not as much bend, though. Bain has shown a lot of different bend. What would you do in this spot if you're the Cardinals at pick number 3? Would you take the flyer on Reese with the upside or try to go with the unicorn in Bain, take one of the guys in Bailey, or are you looking at a different position altogether?
Look at a different position. When I did my mock draft, I did take Arvell Reese because that's the guy that I would definitely take at number 3 overall because of the fact that he strikes me a lot like Micah Parsons. I mean, Micah Parsons started at inside linebacker for the Cowboys, and they kind of gave him some snaps at the edge, moved him all over the line. So I see him as the same type of player. Obviously, there's no Sonny Styles, but that's fine. So I say let's just go with Reuben Bain because he seems like he's going to be the for sure guy if he is at the 3rd overall pick. I don't think Monty Osfort would take him. He's going to probably take Manoa, and I begrudgingly so. But let's go ahead and take Reuben Bain because I think he's the best player on this board.
I think he's the best player on the board. He wouldn't shock me if he's the 2nd best player in this draft after Mendoza. So I'm going to draft him here, and then I'm going to give a pause at least for this spot and see what we'll have at least as far as with the trade deadline. So we're going to see how it fell. So the board fell We do not see a quarterback go in the end of the first round, at least. So you're going to see now Peter Woods, the defensive lineman. Casey Conception falls out of the first round. You got a tackle in Caleb Lomu, who I believe the biggest question with him was health. And you've got Ty Simpson that's here on the board as well. You got a couple other guys, linebacker Jacob Rodriguez, R. Mason Thomas. We do not see Max Ikenaker. He goes to the Dolphins at pick 30 with the new pick that they have from Denver. I think the Cardinals, if they want to get an offensive tackle, they're going to have to trade up. But we do have Ty Simpson on the board, Marcos. What are some of your thoughts about what the Cardinals should do with this pick 34 selection? I think we're clearly seeing if the Cardinals wanted to, we should have tried to trade up with a team like the Houston Texans if we wanted to get an offensive tackle. Right now, the top offensive tackle remaining on the board is still there with Caleb Lomu. But what are some of your thoughts after going edge rusher? Do you take the QB or do you go elsewhere?
Well, if they stick and pick, they're probably just gonna take a offensive. Like if they took Reuben Bain, they understand that offensive lineman's probably gonna be their biggest need. And I mean, for what they didn't do during the offseason and whatnot, I think they're just gonna go with somebody. So if the top tackle is Caleb Lumu, I believe that would probably be the pick. We've seen Monty Ossenford is not allergic to trying to take people who have like injury problems. So I would say Caleb Lumu.
Caleb Lomo. I'll go one further with all of that, Marcos. I think that if he's there at pick 34, I'll say this. I think Ty Simpson would be the pick if he's there at 34. Think that also next year, let's say the Cardinals pick number 1, 2, or 3, and there's 3 quarterbacks on the board. I don't think it would stop them from taking a quarterback. I think that they're going to flood the position. I think in this spot here, the Cardinals would take a Ty Simpson. Personally, would I do that? And then this is my mock draft, and this is our mock draft. No. So let's go with Caleb Lomu. But I do want to point out and say, I think that the Cardinals would take Ty Simpson if he's there at 34. I also think that it would not rule them out. And this is like, from I don't have a lot of inside information, but I will say that is one of the reasons why people are talking a lot about Ty Simpson, such as PHNX and other places. The interest in there is real. The question, of course, is how much interest is in there. There's a possibility we get to draft day and they just say, nope, we're not taking Ty Simpson this year. He's off of the board. Those are all places that are there. I do like Emmanuel Pregnon as a run grader, but they've already gotten Sayamalo for that. Let's go and take Caleb Lomu and move on with our mock draft. We get down to round 3, so we've got Skylar Bell as the top wide receiver. Traden Stukes is available. They got a couple of corners that are all set up over here. A couple of guys who went ahead of the Cardinals. Malachi Lawrence is a good edge rusher. They lost Gennings Dunker, the offensive tackle, went. Bryce Lance, who's been an effective, explosive receiver. And Josiah Trotter, who is one of my favorite linebacker targets that we had over here. Cardinals, Jadarian Price, I think that he's going to be more of a backup running back versus an actual starter as far as it goes. Cardinals, at least in this spot, could potentially take another cornerback, I think, at least, because they need a slot corner. They could also use a safety. The guys that I've really liked in here, at least, have usually been on the defensive side. Not a tight end, not a running back. We've already taken an offensive tackle. We're probably not going to address the interior of the offensive line. Let's take a look at corners, safeties, defensive linemen, and linebackers. What really stands out to me, honestly, is if you wanted to add to the defensive linemen, you got Grayson Halton and Dominique Orange are both there. I don't think they're going to be there with the next pick. Anthony Hill Jr. is a linebacker that you could see that maybe isn't available. And then Dalen Everett, the cornerback, along with Davidson Igbinosun, at the cornerback out of there. Traden Stukes is a little bit of a surprise that he's still here. He's going to be a round 2 corner, but I think he's a little more of an outside corner than a slot guy. Whereas Davison Ignobison, I think that he played outside corner for the most part, played some slot. Stukes is the guy who's played a lot. Okay, so I actually had it mixed around. So Stukes is the guy who's played a ton of snaps in the slot then, and then some places into the box. Who would you take in this scenario, Marcos? It seems like we're probably taking a defensive guy versus an offensive player for the Cardinals, unless you really, really like an interior offensive lineman like Keelan Rutledge.
Well, I took Dominic Orange in my mock draft, and that's the direction I wanted to go because I wanted a big, beefy guy. But Traden Stukes is probably the pick here in the 3rd round, mostly because of the fact that we don't know what Garrett Williams is going to look like. I don't think that this defense is suddenly going to shift players into the preferred positions. Max Melton's probably in the doghouse, and most likely may not even make the team this year, mostly because of whatever he has going on with someone like Nick Ross, which, I mean, I'll say good luck to Max Melton if he does make it this year. Hopefully he does make become the starting outside cornerback. But it doesn't seem like that's likely. Keitrell Clark's probably gone. Elijah Jones is probably another person that's in the doghouse for whatever reason. So Traden Stukes is probably going to be, for me at least, a pick here.
Yeah, I think you take Traden Stukes, and then I think it's going to be, this is the fourth year. This is probably the final year of the rookie quarterback deal for Garrett Williams. I think that he's still waiting on his deal. You can replace him and let him walk to a different team if there's still injury issues, or you at least have a guy who, like you said, can be a good spot there in Stukes. I think Monty, we've also seen he likes to take corners, so let's go ahead and take Stukes. Now we get into the range. This is where we start to see, there you got Garrett Nussmeier at the quarterback position. You can see that Drew Allar, the guy I would have taken, is off of the board. Nussmeier's the highest remaining guy that's left on the board. Cardinals could use a safety. Genesis Smith has actually met with them for the most part. We've already taken a corner to take over the slot spot now. I really like Caleb Proctor as a guy that you would take over here. You also could take Deontay Lawson out of Alabama. This would be another defensive heavy draft for Arizona. This is the one spot where I think if it's me here, this is one of the places where I've got pick number 4 on the clock. I think I can get Tanner McKee with a 5th-round pick from the Philadelphia Eagles. So I'm going to hold off on Nussmeier and see if I can trade for McKee. Do you have any questions then about who you would take with this pick 100, the last, I think, pick, or I should say, excuse me, the first pick of day 3 overall?
I'm with you. I would try to make that trade for Tanner McKee with my 5th pick. We're in the 4th round, I'm assuming, right? Yeah,
yep, we're in round 4, so we're 1 round away.
Okay, so when it gets this deep, it's hard for me to even understand who these players are. Proctor, probably, I would go with the defensive line.
We need a defensive lineman. Proctor is a really good defensive lineman. Probably the fact that he's still here at 104. He's supposed to be around the 130s, but he's one of the guys I love to draft in round 4 and round 5. Let's go ahead and take Caleb Proctor here. And we're going to get back to our 5th-round pick. Now, we're going to see if we can make a trade. So we're going to see if we can make a trade here with the Philadelphia Eagles with selecting a player for Tanner McKee. We'll give up pick number 141, and that will get accepted. So now the Eagles are on the clock. We'll resume our NFL draft. Cardinals now have a backup quarterback with upside who could potentially look good in his starting time last year. You're at pick 182. So you got, I think in this spot, you're probably going to take the linebacker, would seem to make the most sense. Maybe you could take an interior lineman like Pat Coogan out of Indiana. It would be another player you could look at potentially. What are the thoughts that you would have, Marcos? I don't see the Cardinals taking a running back after having Algier and re-signing Zonovan Smith to go along with James Conner and Trey Benson. I think that they're set there at the running back position.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to do that either. Caden Curry, I'm not really familiar with how well he is, but I do know that because he's an Ohio State Buckeye.
He's an Ohio State guy, 6'3", 260, is an edge rusher that's there. Ended up having, I believe, most of the time was playing outside the tackle. Ended up with 12 sacks this past year. Let's go ahead and take Curry, and we'll add to our edge rusher room. I think that's a solid choice on the defensive side, and then that'll take us to our final pick in the 7th round. This is one that I like to just say go for upside for the most part here. Cardinals, at least between, I think Dane Key is the... as far as the passing snaps that were set up, he's spent most of the time out wide versus in the slot. He's 6'3", 210 pounds. He could be your 5th receiver. A lot of people love taking Eli Heidenreich. I think that he's going to end up being a Bronco at some point. I can see him ending up with the likes of Sean Payton. Here's where I'm going to basically kind of go with the spot. I'm going to take Oscar Delp. Delp is someone who, when you take a look at how he was, he's a great blocking tight end and showed a lot as far as being a decent pass catcher. He had only 261 yards, but when you're talking about how the Cardinals' offense went really far down without having a good tight end on the roster, they're always going to run 12 and 13 personnel out there. I would not mind taking a tight end who could be a player that starts off as a special teams guy at tight end and then ends up moving into like a tight end 3 role, because Cardinals aren't going to be able to keep Elijah Higgins around forever. I think getting a second tight end who's got some blocking ability in the 7th round, I think he's good value here.
Okay, let's go ahead and go with that pick. I agree with you.
Let's go ahead and draft him, and that'll be it for our draft. So here's what our final overall haul is going to be for the Arizona Cardinals. You're going to see Reuben Bain Jr. going with the first pick. The Cardinals get Caleb Lomo, taking him over the quarterback in the quarterback out of Alabama with pick number 34. You get Traden Stukes to be your slot corner, Caleb Proctor to be a fun defensive tackle that's going to go along with Proctor and Nolan is 3 techs up in front of it. Caden Curry is the edge rusher that we take, at least out of Ohio State. So Monty gets another Ohio State player. We have Oscar Delp goes in the 7th round, and in round 5 we traded our 5th round pick for Tanner McKee from the Philadelphia Eagles. We'll copy that and paste that at least here for our Redbird Reboot podcast as our mock draft for today. And Marcos, that's going to be it for our show. We've got a bunch more to talk about. We finished talking about quarterback position for now. So some of you guys who are like, please stop talking about, we don't want to have any more conversations here on the likes of Ty Simpson. We don't want any more quarterback talk. Just bring it up in 2027. Some people, they just want to talk quarterback. We're going to probably be doing a few more mock drafts on Mock Draft Monday coming up. I know I'll be on that show consistently. We'll be doing a little bit more potential film breakdown of some of the upcoming players with the top of the draft. And we'll go into our overtime spot now. So we're going to shift now to overtime, where we're going to go through some of your comments. We're going to talk at least with some of you guys here that are reaching out. So let me go ahead and remove the mock draft machine from our scene here. Let's go through a couple comments. Mizaki Felix saying we should never in any case draft Simpson, not even the 7th round free agent, just never. I think there's still a value for him. I don't think it's a don't draft him ever sort of a guy. I think some people, they just absolutely can't stand Ty Simpson or the idea of him with 9 starts. That's definitely some strong words. I think that there's enough talent that's seen that he is worth a draft pick, but it might be that the best served draft pick is the one you don't take, which is you don't take a quarterback this year, prepping for next year. We got Dana popping back up in the chat today. Grandfather's birthday was today, so was forced to be social today. We've got also Haynes King's film from Dana made me want to stop watching, and I wanted to like him, so not a fan of Haynes King. We got someone who is saying, yes, let's talk more Haynes King, says Grandizer for the most part. Yeah. Talking at least about that for the most part. Dana's looking to see if Lomu or Blake Miller were there. I would take Lomu over Blake Miller. I think there's a lot more athleticism and bend that we saw on tape. I think that Blake Miller has got strength in the run game, but there's definitely some struggle in the pass game. Blake Miller would strike me as similar in some cases to Jonah Williams, but you still have the upside of being able to fix some of the pass sets that by Jonah, it was just too late in his career to be able to have. We've got another comment from Dana. Proctor and Nolan both playing 3 tech in a 4-man front would be fun. Proctor is definitely a upfield gap splitter type of player. That's where I think there's definitely some different takes on him. I know Proctor is fun. Like when you get to actually get to watch some of them, like go and search some of the highlights on YouTube, and you'll see him splitting some defenses. It's pretty fun for the most part. You got Grandizer also saying about Minshew Mania. Marco strikes me as a guy who'd wear a Minshew Mania T-shirt, but only for the diehard hardcore fans. I know you should get one of those. Get one of those tank tops with Minshew Mania on it. I know that Gardner Minshew, at least for sure, he looks like Clipboard Jesus. Let's hope that he plays better than Clipboard Jesus.
And that will be the game. I'll do it.
And that will wrap it up for if he wins a game. I would say if he starts a game, let's hope that that isn't the case, that Jacoby Brissett will be the starter. Or if the Cardinals decide to go out there and get a Ty Simpson, let's just see how it goes. That's going to wrap it up, at least here for me and for Marcos. Marcos, if you want to shout out where our viewers and listeners can find you and find your content.
Grandizer actually did a great job here, and thank you very much. I appreciate you being in the comment section, putting out all the, the handles and everything. So you say you may follow Marcos at Pancake Soul. Of course, he has my Twitter or my X account right there. Go ahead and follow me. I'm actually digging up some 2021 film, so could be interested. It's mostly just digging up Kyler Murray film. So if you're interested in watching that, I'll be posting as I go through and save some of these clips.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you'll be able to find me on Twitter /X at BlakeMurphy7. You'll be able to make sure you're always following us with the Redbird Reboot podcast, where you're going to find all of the content as well at Redbird Reboot. We just posted our mock draft over there, and let me know what you guys think of it. Thank you guys again so much for tuning in. This has been the Redbird Reboot podcast. Overtime is now finished. We've talked about these quarterbacks to death. Let's move on and talk about some other prospects next week. Until then, guys, unless we get some more breaking news, that's it for the Redbird Reboot, so that's time for us to log off. Have a wonderful rest of your night, everybody.
See you guys.